Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we normally hear from a guest about one game that had an impactful time in their life. But today, we are getting into continuing our co-op series, the series where I actually sit down with a panel of people and do more of an overview episode on one game at a time. Here in the year 2025, you know that we are doing indie games. That's the whole theme for the year. So we're doing 13. We had a little bonus at the beginning of the year because I played a game starring a character named Indy that I just felt like covering. And the schedule had shifted a little bit. So this is technically the first indie game we're going to be covering today. And that is Papers, Please by Lucas Pope. I'm really excited to get into it today. Anything that my guests or I plug on the podcast, you'll be able to find in a link in the show notes. So whether you're watching this for free on YouTube a week after it comes out, you can just scroll down and find a link. Or if you're listening on Patreon, scroll down and there those gorgeous things are going to be for you. Whether we're plugging Patreon, a podcast, social media, whatever we're plugging, there's going to be a nice link for you in the show notes. Also, you can, if you are listening to this on the free YouTube feed or way in the future on the Call Me By Your Game feed, thank you so much for listening. I would love if you shared the show with a friend or recommended the channel. And if you want to check out whatever theme we're doing for co-op episodes, I don't know, 2.5 years in the future, or however long in the past this episode was for you, go to patreon.com/Super NPC Radio. We're going to have some great bonus stuff for you there. That'll do it for the housekeeping, and I'll introduce our panel of two guests for today's episode. So first, we're going to have a first-timer on the co-op series. Huge day for everybody. Please welcome video editor and contributor at MinnMax. It's Charles Harte.
Hello.
Charles, welcome back. First-time co-op. You've got to just be on the edge of your seat.
I'm so excited. Pardon audio listeners. I made some fan art for Papers, Please.
Oh,
just
wow.
now. I was so excited. I was like, I gotta.
Glory to our
the blinding
Stotska.
lights. Yeah, glory indeed. So if you heard markers in the intro, that was me frantically being like, I gotta do a fun bit.
Yes, need a visual bit. Need a way to like guilt the audio listeners to go check out the YouTube video. Thank you for doing that work for me, and thanks for being here, dude.
Of course.
We're also joined by someone who, at this point, I'm certain this person has been on the second most, if not the most frequent guest on the co-op series, who I hound frequently to be on these things, was even on the last one. It's none other than comedian and player of all games, Tao Yang.
Hey, what's up? Wait, can I go get my fan art from my? It's in my closet actually. If that's okay, it'll take like 10 seconds.
You have a green light.
You have
Please.
to. Yeah.
I'm actually granting you entry through the gate here, if I can make a reference to the game for this fan art.
Your stamp of approval, if you will.
Yes. I'll be honest, Charles, I thought this was a bit. It looks like this is actually real. Tao is actually grabbing something to show us.
This is my fan art. This is my...
Your passport. Okay. Zoom is blurring it out.
It's just an actual passport.
Yes, because of the blur background feature.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love
ice out there. Hello, here you go. All right, this is all. If ice, I know Connor, you have a lot of ice agents who watch your show.
Shout out Ice, I guess.
Shout out Ice.
We're mostly
no need to come to my apartment, guys.
Yes. I'm pleased that was both a bit and had me thinking it was real. And also, yeah, that's the funny thing. You wouldn't guess by the nature of the show or anything we've talked about in the past or just the way we carry ourselves. But actually, most of our audience are ICE agents. And so for that reason, this is the last episode of the show. I tease. Tao, welcome back, buddy. We just had you on to talk about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Yes.
And here you are again.
Two games that maybe take place in the same time period.
They at least have something in common, and that something being, oh boy, are fascists just abound. You might think that that's the co-op theme this year, is that we're doing games.
It's fascism year.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not the co-op theme, but maybe the theme outside of the podcast, just for the world.
The U.S. government got so excited by the concept of the year of Luigi and the year of Shadow. They're like, what if we just did the year of fascism? Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, we're gonna take a page out of that book. Yes, so excited to be here, despite all of the horrors that we are currently living in. But either way, what a way to kick things off with the actual first indie game that we're covering today and talking about Papers, Please. Today we're going to talk about our personal histories with the game. We're going to give a brief overview and set the table about what this game is in case we have some listeners who are not super familiar or would just like to hear an overview to see if this is a game they might want to play themselves. And then we're going to get into all of our thoughts and anything we feel like sharing about the game today. And I'll have you two know, I woke up this morning and I made sure I jotted down some notes in a little notebook. I didn't want to come here and just not be prepared. So I'm pumped to talk to you two about this. Before we get into a little bit of table setting for this game, let's just talk about our personal histories with it. This was my first time playing the game. I've been aware of this for a while. I think, Tao, you're actually the person who brought Lucas Pope into my life, because in the first year of Call Me By Your Games run back in 2020, you brought on a little game called The Return of the Obra Dinn to discuss on the main feed.
Greatest game of all time.
One that I could have discussed for this series, but as a theme that the listeners will find for the series is that we've been lucky to cover a lot of indie games, whether it be in the one-on-one format or in even like the Games Club. Last year we happened to play Hollow Knight for a whole Games Club series, so we're covering games that we haven't done, and I figured Papers, Please, it was about time I got to it. So yeah, Tao brought Lucas Pope into my life is how I'm saying it. Been aware of this game for a while. I actually nominated this for our one of our games clubs a couple years ago. The patrons did not vote for it, and in retrospect, I think this is probably a better format to talk about the game than a sort of day by day, especially because of the sort of what I'll describe as maybe the roguelike elements of it. It's probably not the best way to describe the changes that you can experience through different playthroughs, but yeah, first time playing it. Boy, I have a lot to say. I didn't actually, I reached endings in the game, but I never reached like a successful ending in the several weeks that I played this. So I had a lot of like, your whole family died, you're a failure, and too many citations, you're actually being detained, sort of things. But that, I still have plenty to say, and I was still fascinated. Tao, what is your history like with this game? Obviously, I was talking about how you introduced me to the Lucas Pope games in general, but had you played this before?
Yeah, I've played it when it came out. It was a while ago, so I don't really remember. I think this game came out like over
2013,
so it's over 10 years ago, so it was a while ago, but I just remember I have an obsession with any game that the premise of it is like inherently boring or sounds boring or like is like some mundane part of life.
Sure.
Do you have another example?
I mean, like Return of the Obra Dinn on paper, it's like you are an insurance adjuster. Any game that's like, you are this incredibly boring occupation, I'm in. I'm like, how is this game going to work? How is this game going to be fun? Any kind of game like that, I love that. Like, I can't think of any other games.
Gardener Hero version 1. Probably a big fan of Gardener Hero.
Anything like that, I love that. I love games like that. And when I first played this, I loved it right away. Like the story, the vibe, like the music. And I didn't really know anything I didn't even think about like Lucas Pope as like a creator. Like I didn't think about the creator behind the game. I just assumed it was like some small indie game studio. It was only until Return of the Obra Dinn that I was like, oh, this guy has like some whatever it is, he has it. You know, he's got it.
Sure. Yeah,
I would play anything. I mean, I am considering buying a play date just to play the game he made for it. So
yeah, Mars After Midnight.
Yeah, any game he's made, I'm in.
So obviously you played this game a long time ago. Have you ever revisited this game or like dipped back in for fun?
I was playing it just now this morning, and that's why I was a little late because I was in it.
Oh, hey, you're fine. You had people coming in to cross the border. You had a job to do.
I had a job to do.
Well, Teo, thank you for sharing a little bit of your history and being here. Charles, not to I guess get out too far ahead of it, but I understand that you and I have kind of a similar history, which is this is our first times playing it.
Yes, kind of.
Okay.
So, my college major was a bunch of things, but one of the things it had was a focus on video games. So I took a class called Game Studies and New Media, and one of our like reading list was just a bunch of video games, which was very cool. But like a reading list in an English class, I often didn't do the reading because I was just doing other stuff. So I was assigned this game and have pretended to have played it.
Oh, sure,
but
yes.
This was the first time I had actually played it. So I think I played like 10 minutes of it and I owned it already, but I hadn't actually like sat down and gotten into it. So great game. Also, if I had to play it for homework, it would be way rougher than the context I think in which you play this game would make a big difference just because of the inherent mundane nature of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I also, if you're anything like me or like anyone really in college who like samples an assignment they were supposed to do, I'm sure you were like familiar with the game and sort of brushed up enough to be like, oh yeah, professor, I found this part interesting, even though you maybe didn't even touch it.
Wow. Did you ever cram a game by just being like, I'm going to watch a Let's Play at like 5x speed?
Often tried to. I mean, there's like, and maybe this is just me, but maybe this is relatable. There's phases in the semester, right? Like if it's a 12-week semester, weeks 1 through 4, it's like, I'm going to play all these games. Weeks 5 through 8, it's like, I'm going to kind of play them a little bit and then I'm going to fall behind. And then like those last few weeks, it's like, I totally forgot there was a game and I don't even know what's going on. One of my favorites was, we had to play a game called Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. And it's this indie game where you are like a, 1800s era like pioneer and you're just walking across a big map of the United States. And I remember being like playing it and being like, wow, this game kind of sucks. I'm not enjoying it. Brought it into class and he was like, so what did you think about it? And no one was really saying something, and eventually I raised my hand and I was like, I thought it was kind of boring. And the professor was like, yes, it's kind of boring. And I was like, oh no, I passed his test.
What? I wasted your time.
Aha! But it was talking about like, you know, the game design and the flaw that it had and et cetera, et cetera. This was a game where I believe the segment was we did a lot of talking early on, very, very like, you know, biology 101, professor walks up to the chalkboard, writes the word biology, underlines it, and says, what is biology? We had that in game studies where he was like, what is a game? And then we did spend like 3 weeks being like, at what point is it a game versus some other thing? And I think this is one where it was very much like, I mean, it is a game in the... that's the easiest way to describe it to someone, but like it's not fun in a traditional sense. Like you're not. So it's an interesting conversation piece for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I took a narrative writing for games class about 1.5 years ago, and that's also pretty much how we started the conversation. Outside of like getting into like basic narrative structure and like all that sort of stuff, was what makes a game, because we talked about visual novels a lot, and this isn't a visual novel, but it does have some things in common with visual novels, so it all begs a similar question. I'm glad we got to get through our histories with the game. We're going to do a little table setting for what it is. I've got some very brief context that I'm going to share, just a few paragraphs, courtesy of our friends over at Wikipedia. But if either of you want to jump in with like an anecdote or anything you'd like to share about the history of this game's development, this is very basic, so you both have the green light. Without further ado, Papers, Please is a puzzle simulation video game created by indie game developer Lucas Pope, developed and published through his production company 3909 LLC. The game was released originally on August 8th, 2013 for Microsoft Windows and for OS X and Linux in on February 12th, 2014. So about 6 months later, and for iOS on December 12th, 2014. In Papers, Please, the player takes on the role of a border-crossing immigration officer in the fictional dystopian country of Arstotzka, which has been and continues to be at political hostilities with its neighboring countries. Immediately, I feel like even this is dipping a little into the game itself, but it's very easy to draw comparisons to what we might think of as like Soviet Russia in the 80s, or it's also really not hard not to think about Nazi Germany, just sort of an fascistic, like oppressive country in a sort of dystopian era. The player must review travelers' passports and other supporting paperwork, which against an ever-growing list of rules using a number of tools and guides. Tasks include allowing in individuals with the proper paperwork while rejecting those without all proper documents, detaining those with falsified information, and balancing personal finances that affect your at-home life, which you never, at least in all of the playthroughs I did, never even saw. It's almost like you see the representation of your family in little icons and not even faces, just names and sometimes letters. Papers, Please was positively received on its release, and the game was recognized as one of the greatest video games ever made, along with various awards and nominations from the Independent Games Festival, from GDC Awards and BAFTA Video Games Awards, and was named by Wired and The New Yorker as one of the top games in the year that it came out during 2013. By its 10th anniversary, Papers, Please had sold more than 5 million copies, and we were talking a little bit about Lucas Pope and the games he's continued to make, and there's a few others that we didn't touch on, nor do we really need to, but he has continued his legacy of being a very, this is going to feel like a reduction, but like a creative, unique game maker using like a very limited tool set in a lot of cases, and I feel like this game is a testament to that and to making something very compelling or interesting at the very least. Is there any history or context about this game, whether it be development stuff or details that either of you would like to pepper in before we actually get into our discussion about the game itself? Okay.
I think for like Lucas Pope, I think his history is that he worked at Naughty Dog.
Yes.
But he made like tools. Like that was his main thing, is like he made tools for other designers or programmers to like, and if you've like worked in like Unity a little bit, it's like you just create like a system for like a tile system would be like a potential tool that you create, so you can like make like maps really quickly. So it's like he made tools for other people to use to actually create things. And for this game to be his like breakout hit, really, because he did like a bunch of like, I guess, prolific game jams, and for this game to be like his first big hit, it's just interesting to see like to make that leap from like, I have my relatively safe job at like one of the premier video game studios out there, like pretty safe, to go like, I'm gonna go fully independent and make my first game. It's like, it's crazy that it was such a big giant hit. I think I don't know how big of a hit it is. Like, do normal people, I mean, it's like one of these things that's like huge in the game community. I don't know if it like is like a Stardew Valley level hit, but it's, I don't know. It's just incredible for this to be like the first game he made, or the first game that like really broke out for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does feel like the one that is still definitely under the radar, and you have to be, I don't even know how I would qualify this, but like a little too into games or so aware of them that you might stumble upon this less traditional style of game. Especially, it's just seeing just juxtaposing the games he worked on as this sort of tool maker at Naughty Dog. Yeah. In the Uncharted series, I believe he worked on the first two in some capacity, to the games that he chose to make and break out and do is very interesting. Charles, did you want to add something on, or were you going to include something? I couldn't tell by your physical appearance.
I maybe was going to, but it has since lost me.
Good. I'm glad I talked long enough for you to forget your thought. That's
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think what Tao said was infinitely more interesting than whatever I was going to say. I think I was going to fill the space.
Oh, don't worry, buddy. At some point, you're going to say something interesting, and we're going to be so happy for it. Well, cool. Yeah, let's get into it. There's a lot more too that if listeners want to learn about Lucas Pope, like how he got into making games, all the way up through like, you know, right before he released this game, and like there's plenty of resources and videos and articles out there to do that, because he's received some notoriety ever since this game came out. Let's get into our discussion about this game. To kick things off, and if basically we've all got the green light to bring up any sort of topic or aspect of the game that we want to discuss, no matter how large or small. But the first thing that comes to mind, which is something that Charles and I were discussing even before the podcast. Charles, this was the way you put it into words, so I want to give you credit, was you mentioned that it felt like clocking in to play this game. Obviously, that makes sense from the perspective that, like, we are, to Teo's point, playing a sort of mundane-ish game where we are going to work a job. But I would almost underline what you said and add just that, like, it felt like kind of work playing this game, despite me still being very compelled, both by the design and what was going on. I'm not sure if you wanted to elaborate or expand on that point at all.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because you really have to like lock in. Like when it starts off, there's the basic gameplay is you're like looking at a passport and you're seeing, do these details match up? And at first it's like, is it from this country? Yes, then they're in. No, then they're not in. And then it becomes like, does their weight on the passport match the weight that they're standing on? Does their description of their hair match what their actual hair is? And so you do get really into like a flow of things. And to me, it was kind of it's a way that games are really good in expressing things it's hard to do with words, because as you play the game, there's the time limit, there's money that you're trying to make, and it all becomes a way of like, they're not real people, but the system makes them really not real people. And I don't know if you guys found it, but as I played the game, I was getting a little bit more ruthless over time of like, eventually you make a deal with a guard who's like, hey, if you detain people, I get a bonus and I'll give you some of that money if you detain some more people. So it got to the point where it's like, yeah, this person's gender is wrong on their passport, and then I just click the detain button, and it gets to the point where it's like, I'm actually not even reading your dialogue box. I'm already clicking the call the next person up on the line thing because I want to get another person in to make sure I can feed my family and such. Yes.
I mean, there's so much that I want to echo there. The first of which might be how you, going into this game, my understanding of it was far more simplistic than it actually is. I thought this was going to be more of a game where you were truly kind of more just so in a vacuum, deciding whether or not to let people in through, and it was more of just like a moral thing. Like, are you doing your job as a border agent, or are you letting this person in who says, hey, I'm being followed by someone, let me in and not them, I need to be saved. Because there is so much more to it. There's the punishment factor. There's the family at home that you have to earn enough money and not get citations at your job to take care of and to pay for these expenses that continue to mount. I also became more ruthless and started playing the game differently from early on. Like my first couple runs, like if you try to play this game like an empathetic person, which is probably going to be a lot of our instincts, the game is going to tell you you're just going to lose your run, whether it be, like I was kind of saying earlier, by getting too many citations and being detained yourself, or your entire family dies and you're considered like, I don't know, Arstotzka takes an issue with that as well. Tao, I know that you sort of dipped in today after playing this, probably close to a decade ago, if not more. Do any of these ideas resonate with you today?
Yeah, I think the like ulterior motive, like the double like incentive thing you have in the game is like very smart. And having played some of the copycat versions of this game,
Ooh.
like there's one that came out that was like you're a bouncer at a bar, so it's like you're checking like IDs of people like trying to get in to a bar. Or there's like a 3D one that's like more complicated where you're like it is like you're checking like cars and looking for contraband. It's a contraband simulator or something.
Oh, sure.
Those games are all missing this element, which is like you have like two objectives going on at the same time. Which like there's like no like reason for the game itself. I don't like there's such an inherently like you're conflicted while playing this game, and these other games don't have that element of it. And this is that really what makes this game is like you're kind of trying to do two things at the same time, which is like make enough money for your family but not feel like a monster.
Yeah, I'm like constantly bargaining with myself of like, well, like Charles was talking about the moment in the game where the guard gives you incentive to detain people, and instead of maybe just denying someone's passport, if like I took a few opportunities to do a bit of what I might call an early detain, and it was you're constantly just like between that push and pull of that conflict throughout this entire thing.
Yeah. And you do get to this flow state of like where you're kind of glancing over like passport numbers. You're like, okay, yeah, that's the same. You're not looking at every single letter. You're just like, okay, yep, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. You like get into a work flow state. Oh,
I mean, Charles, you use the phrase lock in, which I feel like colloquially I've just been hearing so much lately. But that's like one of the big things I wanted to discuss was like one thing I like that is fun to sort of clock in my gameplay in any sort of game, whether it be this, something more traditional like Uncharted, or even like Avowed or Stardew Valley, like plenty of games that I'm playing right now, is how I play these games. And I always wonder sometimes, like, is what I'm doing unique, or is this more common, or have I just streamlined this for my own process? And to get us, for that to be a really big roundabout way to get us back to the locking in discussion, I had like, after a few sessions of losing, and like over time I was developing day by day like my whole setup in my little booth on how I would set things up. Is this something you did too, Charles?
Oh yeah, I mean you're just like gets to the point of being like, I'm gonna put this in this corner and this in that corner, and this there's a, if you haven't played the game, there's a part of the desk that's like close up, and then there's a part of the desk that's like zoomed out. So if you want to move stuff out of the way, you can put it to the side, but you won't be able to read it. But you get to the point where you're like, I know the rules well enough. I know if this stamp is wrong, I can set this aside and just focus on the other things. Yeah,
totally.
It's like a job. You have like a little space. You're like, I'm organizing my space this way. So like, I put the little wanted poster. Like, I like put most of it off of the screen. I have just the faces on. I try to put my like the passports over here. I try to put little documents over here. Like you just like have like you like treat it like a day job that you have. You're like, oh, this is exactly how I have my setup.
100%. I could like draw for you my setup, and of course that changes day by day as the requirements change, as the rules change, as they introduce more and more things that we were checking. Like Charles kind of took us through. Like at the first, you're just seeing if they're from this country or not, and by the end, you're just clocking so many things that you, in order to succeed, and when I say that is to survive and continue to play the game, you really have to streamline your process. And that's something that was like, that maybe was getting back to even the flow state idea that Tao was talking about. Does that feel accurate, Tao? Like is that the reason you were bringing that up, was the flow state of the process of checking documents?
Where you're like, I'm barely like conscious right now. I'm just like, boom, deny, accept.
Totally.
And I think that's why the like emotional stakes are such an interesting part, because it's like so left brain. We were like, I'm not even gonna pay attention to what you're saying, and then someone's like, hey, my dad is really sick and he can only afford medicine if you let him in. He's coming in right after me. Can you also let him in? I'm like, ugh, man.
Yes.
Like, I know he's not going to have all his papers. I'm trying to get into a flow here. And it's 10 out of 10 times much faster to say no. And there's not consequences. Like, just like in real life, if you were to turn this person away, you'd probably never see them again and it wouldn't affect you, but you still have the, like, it takes you out for it's also timed. I don't know if we've emphasized that.
I don't
enough.
think so.
Like, the amount of people you're getting through, there's a stress because you're like, if I can get enough people through, I get more money.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go from your, like, yes, no type deal to being like, all right, let me really think about, like, the moral implications of what I'm letting through here. I can only get so many citations a day. Is it worth it to let this guy through? Yeah,
I almost felt like the game conditioned me in that way, because starting out, both coming from, like, this perception that I have of what that it was going to be going into it, more of just like, listening to people's stories and just making a tough choice, like, to fully shifting, like you were saying, Charles, to that whole left brain side where I'm efficient. And the only reason I'm even looking at what they said is if I want to double check that their reasons for crossing the border are consistent. Speaking of which, that was one of the moments where, there were several moments for me throughout this game where I had to, like, almost familiarize myself with not just rules, but, like, I realized there were certain elements of facts that I was supposed to be checking that I really struggled with and had to not overcome, but, like, just become familiar with. Before I say a couple, did either of you have any like that? Like, Charles, was there a moment in the game where you're like, ooh, this was kind of a road bump for me?
So I do want to pause real quick because I want to go back to something you said much earlier.
Please,
and I want to ask Tao what his experience was.
Totally.
So, Tao, did you do multiple runs of this game? Because I just played it through once, and Connor's talking about it, like, getting all these endings and never getting a good one, and I just kind of got the good ending right away. And I don't know if this is me being really good at the game or Connor being really bad at the game. Not that it's bad to be. I wanted to know if there was a median experience, what it looks like.
Yeah, I think I only played through it all the way through once when I played it, because I was just playing the endless mode this morning.
Okay.
Well, when I first played it,
Sounds
I
like
think
sad Tetris almost.
Yeah, it is. Well, you can't make a mistake in endless mode, otherwise the mode ends.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But I think I got a decent ending because, I mean, I think after, like, day one, I was like, well, there's no point in me being at all empathetic. I'm just going full ruthless. Like,
Okay.
deny. I don't care what your story is. Like, so I made a lot of money, I think.
Also, are spoilers okay, Connor?
Spoilers are totally fine. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Tao, did you go with the, like, revolutionary group? Or were you just like, I'm going to follow the rules, I'm not going to pay attention?
I think I followed the rules. I followed the rules and I went, I'm fully red pilled.
So I was red pilled and then the revolution came and I was like, oh, there's a better way. And that was like an actually good ending.
Yeah. And an element I just didn't expect, but not to get us off track from what you were getting us to, Charles.
Well, you were just talking about road bumps and I was like, I didn't know if these were like run ending things for you. I just wanted to mention that because it was a thing.
Sure.
The thing that was throwing me off that I never thought to pay attention to, which is also maybe like, it was a thing I wouldn't have thought so much about if it wasn't like our current political climate, but the gender part on the passport was something where someone was like, oh, the gender's wrong. And I was like, oh, I wasn't, to be honest, I didn't really care. And the faces are kind of pixelated, so it wasn't a thing. And really interesting how the, like, fascism gets so personal into, like, the bodies of, if you suspect someone's gender is not match their face, it does a, like, X-ray photo shoot and you see, like, their naked body through their clothes and you have to be like, oh, do the genitals match up? And that's, like, I think we're talking about how it turns you into, like, a machine. You just don't think about it. It's one of, like, many ways it's like, we're gonna really dehumanize these people. It's just a yes or no. Does it match or does it not match?
Totally. Yeah. I definitely, like, was having that was also one that I wasn't checking, and it wasn't even because I was in this headspace of just like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just like it didn't come up for me until days into the game, like maybe 7 or so days into the game, I got my first citation that was like not checking the gender or the gender not being consistent, and then I was like, oh, I just have not been looking for it this whole time. And then it does push you to be so invasive and mechanical about the whole thing. It brings to mind so many, like, I have so many things I want to talk about with this whole thing. The first of which is just like, I always think of this, just in our day and age, and I'm so sorry to just be on such a soapbox in this episode. It's kind of impossible with the subject matter, but like, throughout this whole game, I didn't empathize with, I want to be careful how I say this. I was going back and forth on how I was feeling about like someone who might find themselves in the position that we, the player character, would be, which is like an immigration officer, which I, in my worldview outside of this game, view as like just such a harmful profession is maybe the soft way I'll put it, and an oppressive one. But when in the perspective of the game and being someone who has been granted this job as an opportunity to sort of like kind of take care of their family and do the best that they can, it does present an interesting moral quandary, despite the feelings that I came in loaded with into this game. Well,
I think you, in your defense of like feeling the empathy for the person's situation, I don't think you come out of it being like, so that's why it's okay that we take pictures of these people. You're just like acknowledging the nuance of it, of like, this scene. I think this is a job that the character gets placed into.
That's
like, it's
true.
It's not a career they're looking for. It is like there's a fascist regime taking over the country, and is like, this is your job now.
They didn't dream as like a little kid to someday I want to be a border officer.
Exactly.
It's like,
sorry to interrupt you.
What's the takeaway is kind of a question of like, what do you leave this game with empathy for? And is it like, or like maybe an understanding of like, you can be part of like a fascist system and like, you're not like evil, but you're just in this system that you can't really escape out of, that you need to take part of, like,
and understanding how like they're not real people.
True.
So there's an extent where like you can literally dehumanize them, but understanding how it's like, wow, these aren't even real people, and I'm finding myself being particularly ruthless in this, like just a way of showing how the system can force people to comply to the. Yeah.
And you automatically create stories for these people, even though they're like procedurally generated. It's like, this person, he needs to go work their fisherman job for 2 months, and like you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is this guy's vibe. Like, this is a person now. But you're like, I still gotta deny you, buddy.
Yeah.
Did you ever find
it's what I need?
did you ever find yourself so if someone like gave me a work permit and they're like, I'm gonna be here for 2 months, and then I can see the work permit says 2 days, and I'm like, this is wrong, and he's like, no, I think it's right, I don't feel bad turning that guy away for some reason, like whereas like it's like when the gender's wrong, or like their name changed but there's no record of it. It is interesting how they're all equivalents in the game's systems, but I'm just like, all right, well, you're kind of stupid for not renewing your work permit early enough.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. When you can be actually like, well, you messed up here, buddy. Like, this is a genuine, like, even if it was we lived in a good world. Yeah. Like, I would reject you because this is like a normal rule versus like a fascist rule.
I want to let you in. Trust me, I want to let you in, but there's a discrepancy. It is funny, though, how those different types of discrepancies can elicit different feelings, because I went through the same thing, Charles. And speaking of which, like, it's funny. One of the things I noticed in this game is that, like, there are certain checks that you do where you can interrogate someone, because of a discrepancy, and occasionally they'll have the opportunity to correct a discrepancy, whether it's like, oh, my name's changed, and you can check if they have an alias, or they can do a fingerprint to see if it matches the record that you have. One that I noticed that they can sort of change in the booth is what they claim as their statement as they come in, whether it be what they're like crossing for or visiting Arstotzka for, and how long the visit's going to be. Early on in my gameplay, and one of my failed runs, and I think I might just be bad at it, is that
okay. There's a lot of endings to your credit, so you saw more of the game than I did.
True. You know what? I'll take that as my victory. But early on, I would be like, oh, there's an inconsistency here, and I would like deny someone even after they would say, oh, right, I am just gonna be here for 2 weeks, not 6 months, and I would get citations for that. And so that's it. It taught me that is the one area that I just have to take them at their word, and if their word matches their like sheet or whatever, then that's an okay thing to be okay with the change with.
Yeah, it's interesting.
By the way, the citations too, like almost I feel like I developed like not a Pavlovian response to it, but like it felt like I was having like just being punished every time I would get a citation.
Yeah.
So much of the sound and especially the music in this game is so grating and oppressive that like when I would send someone through, and then I think it's not I don't know if it's timing based when they pass or when you click to send a new individual to your desk, but hearing the like thing print, the citation print, was so grating, and I just hated that. I don't know if either of you had like a physical response to it.
You click it and then you like brace. Like every time I was like, I went through, and then you don't hear it. I'm like, okay, I feel a little better.
Yeah, it's again to like fanboy over Lucas Pope. He blogs pretty consistently, or like writes like posts about his game development.
Oh wow,
they're all on his like website, and so it's fun to see him like, and he's like very like in depth, especially with Papers, Please, like. Just like posting like, here's 2 options, like what do people like. It's he's like puts it on these forums, like just like really going like piece by piece, responding to people. So he's like very thorough about like blogging and stuff. And it's incredible, just like he really did it all by himself for the most, like, and it's insane to be so talented. Also just like making like the sound effects and the music for his games. I listen to the Obra Dinn soundtrack like all the time. It's such a good soundtrack. It's just like, I'm just like enamored by the fact that you can do so many like pieces of a game and do it really well. Like it's just, I don't know, I'm like in awe of it.
Yeah, it is so much for one person to cover and execute at like such a high level. I also think something that this is not a new thought or unique thought for me, but the fact that he's great at scoping his games, and this one in particular, both from like a gameplay perspective, but like all the elements that are in it, it can feel overwhelming as the player, especially like the deeper you get into it. Like Charles, you mentioned the moment where they ask you to start checking like height and weight and like hairstyle, and then I'm just like, oh my god, there's just like I don't know how I can check 22 things and get enough people through. But to the player, it's overwhelming, but it's amazing to me that he was able to pull that off and at such a high level. And I think that just came from us talking about the sound, the grating sound of the printing of the citation.
I had a few things I was going to say. I think one of them is that it's astounding that the game, it is, I think a correct word is mundane. I think to maybe say the job is boring, I think is correct. But I don't think the game is boring.
Yeah.
And to his credit, he always finds a way, like every day is different. Every day there's a new rule that gets added or removed, or it's like, hey, don't let anyone from this country in. Or today it's like, oh, we have a new most wanted list you have to pay attention to. Like the fact that he was able to put in, it's so procedurally generated, but it still feels fresh between, day 5 and day 27 is like really impressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're like enough, and I don't know if I can even put my finger on exactly what it was. I know that you gave the example of introducing like a new or unique element sort of day by day, or how things can shift to keep you on your toes. And maybe that's a lot of what it is that each day you're not going to go through the exact same checks, even if it's more of a gradual change over time, or just something that like completely throws off your process that is introduced. Yeah, that might be a big reason why that's the case, because I would agree. Not the job itself boring, the gameplay not particularly exciting, but nevertheless, I was compelled the entire time. But I'm almost fully circling back to sort of the beginning of the discussion when I was just talking about how I would come and play this game for like an hour, and I probably did 4 or 5 sessions where I just came and did a run. And my last few times, because I had gotten so far in runs, I would the game gives you the opportunity to start from a previous day in a run. So I would go to the one where I had the most money and my family was fine, and the next day I failed, and restart. So what I would do was, after I would sit down and play this for 45 minutes to an hour, and it really felt like I was coming to sit down to edit a video, that type of work, and not a video maybe that I want to be editing. I would have to detox afterwards. And I'm also, as a part of the indie series, finally playing Stardew Valley for the first time in my life. And I'm doing an episode, and it's going to be December's episode. So I'm playing that just gradually. I would go and play at least one day of Stardew Valley after each run, because I just had to go. That's so good. And go. It felt like the perfect chaser to the shot that was Papers, Please.
Complete opposite political ideologies in those games. One is you're a fascist immigration guard, and the other one is I'm gonna provide crops for my community.
Yeah,
and fall in love.
Couldn't be more different. So yeah, probably pretty obvious why I used
Connor,
that.
you didn't find Jojo Mart more enticing to go with when after you play
the more I played this game, the more I just put my resources behind Jojo Mart. What's happening to my brain chemistry?
It's just so efficient.
Yeah. Gosh, that was funny. I wanted to bring up one thing I sort of had gotten. I had asked a question, and I meant to answer myself. The one big road bump I had in the game where I lost a run that I was cleaning house. Sounds like an awful term to use when succeeding in this game. Gosh, even just the way I'm talking about it feels gross. But a run where I was surviving and setting myself up to see more of the game is maybe what I'll say. I hit the moment where it was the stamps, the seals of approval that really threw me off, because I think I was reading so quickly the instructions and so worried about seeing more individuals that I almost went over it too fast and didn't understand what they meant by seals. And I think what it meant was the stamp that's on the paper that shows that it's an official document, versus there was a time where I was checking the front of passports to make sure it matched the country of origin's logo, and I don't think that is what it is. Charles, do you know which it was? Because I think it was just the stamp on the paper.
It is, yeah. There's stamps on various papers that'll be it'll be a round one with no text, or a square one with text, or it'll just be an outline. Yeah.
And it has to be the official seal, which
or it has to be present at all. Yeah.
Totally. Which, so many elements in this, you can skim over stuff or think that it's correct, and I would find myself kind of, I don't know if I was just reacting too much to what the game was presenting, but I would be thrown off by certain citations where I was oh my gosh, I need to see more people. And now I'm it's almost like when you're playing sports or doing anything, I'm still judging the failure that I just had, and I can't even focus on this person's information. That happened to me multiple times, and was not fun. I have a few more things that I could talk about. We've kind of dipped into some of them. Teo, I want to turn to you really quick. Is there an element of this game or anything that you want to bring up and discuss while we're here?
I guess I just would bring back up like the game feel of just everything feels like nice in the kind of like a horrible atmosphere.
Yeah.
Of just like the like feel of like, oh, I'm moving the document back and forth and like it opens up, or like just like the way the stamp comes out and slides out, and then you hit the thing, and the way like the documents like drop and fall off when you give them back to people, like all the way just like the lines connect when you do like discrepancies and it like pops up. It's just all like, I just love when games have like those things that are individually like small little like optimizations, but when it all comes together, it feels really good. Kind of like Balatro, like all like the little effects.
Yeah.
It just all adds up into this like, oh, this feels like good to play.
Yeah, like I don't know if I would describe those as like, maybe the way to say it is like they can feel, and the tools you're using feel like tactile elements. Like I also loved, especially when I like upgraded the booth and I could just press, I played this on PC. Is it even available on Switch? I don't even know if it is, but I don't know how you would play it on something that's not like a mouse and keyboard.
I guess phones make sense.
Okay, yeah. But playing it on PC, when I would tab over and have the stamp slide out, both the look of the stamp machine and just the sound of it, it's always like the combination, so many of the elements in here and the tools you use, the combination of sound and the like physical nature of having to shift something around, or even like I found myself trying to line stuff up really well, which is so unnecessary in this game. Yeah. Like just stamp the thing, even if part of the stamp, I don't even know if you can get in trouble for like half stamping something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was finding too, this is kind of off of Teo's subject, but back into the gameplay a bit, and the streamlining a process was that I was like, even where I would like be putting my mouse, getting ready for someone to show up, or resetting the little rule book before someone would be there, just so that I could like shave off seconds at a time to see people, was like, I was like, oh my God, what is happening to my brain the way I'm playing this? But yeah, Teo, I echo that. That is such the tactile nature of the tools and the things in the game that feel so good. Is a testament to the design for sure. Charles, is there anything else you want to discuss, or like an element we haven't even brought up today?
I want to talk about the family of it all. So I did make it to the end, but I misunderstood the UI at the beginning in the first few days. So when you finish a day, you have your savings, and then you have the money you earn from the day, and then there's a little checklist of things you can spend money on, typically food and heat and potentially medicine for people that are sick. And then maybe eventually, if you're getting enough money, you can like move to a new apartment, or you can upgrade your booth to get, quicker features. I misunderstood this, and I kept unclicking things, thinking I was spending it. So I did kill, I think, my wife and my daughter within the first, like, however many days. And I think it was just me, my mother-in-law, and my uncle.
Oh my God.
So I killed those people, did not realize I was a part of it, and I was like, oh, okay, I understand now. Luckily, I had saved so much money from not providing food or heat for so many days that money wasn't an issue for me after that. Yeah. But I just find that to be a really interesting part of it that you mentioned that I never really thought of, Connor, that it's like you don't see the family. They're not even they're not even a consideration in the scheme of the game. It's just like, yeah, don't kill your daughter. Your daughter's sick. And I kind of got really into, this is kind of how I play a lot of games, where I was like really into like the role playing of it, where I was like thinking about this guy, and when the Ezek, the revolutionary guys, show up and they start giving you like hints to join their cause and stuff, I did have the thought process. I was like, well, I was forced to this job and it led to the death of 2 of my family members. So if there's a better way, I want to like fight for it. And I got really into that like mindset.
Totally. Like that's where your character, a route your character could follow there.
Yeah. was factored into my. I keep thinking of the phrase emotional calculus of the just piloting this game.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the family of it all, especially because like the things we've been talking about, how you don't see them, they're not even really like a health bar. They're sort of just like a token on the side of the screen that you're checking in with between days. You never hear from them. Like
they don't have names.
No, they're son, wife, MAL, which took me a while to realize what that meant. It may actually spell it out more specifically at a certain point, but it brought me back, Charles, because I had a similar thing that was going on as far as just like filling in my own narrative gaps as to like how they were doing and my relationship to them and who mattered to me if I had to make like a tough decision. It reminded me of like early gaming in my life where you did more of filling in gaps, or like when I would read growing up and sort of imagine what spaces would look like, or in Pokemon is like, oh, I don't talk to my Pokemon that are in my party, but like, what have me and my Squirtle been through or whatever? I was doing that sort of filling in the gaps here, but I think in my world, I was almost so focused on the stress of work and the job that I felt like I was almost like neglecting my family, which was like such a weird feeling to like bring to this game myself.
Yeah, you work 7 days a week and you don't ever see them, and it's just like my character didn't even have time to mourn the death of two of his family members. I had to go back to work the next day to make sure I could buy medicine for my uncle also.
Yes. Yeah. Just absolutely brutal. You had brought up speaking of, interesting elements in this game, I did really appreciate the interesting wrinkles that the game would throw at you throughout, whether it be additional elements of inspection that you have to do, but more specifically was that sort of like revolutionary group that starts to show up, and it does give a feeling of, I feel like the way that he built that was really smart, of like you first see after meeting someone from this revolutionary group or getting a document dropped off, it's either the day after or like 2 days after where like a supervisor or someone visits you, and immediately I just had the feeling that I was like being watched and that I had to be a little more careful with how I was going about this. I don't know if that resonated with you guys at all.
Definitely vibes, yeah.
Yeah. You're always being watched,
Dude.
At all times.
What is this, real life, Teo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I really wish that I could have seen like an ending of where this could head eventually. For what, as far as the group goes, it sounds like there's like a revolutionary route. I don't know, Charles, or was it Tay? I can't remember which one of you was bringing that up. But would you elaborate on that a little bit to fill in the gaps for me?
So they just start asking you to do more and more complicated tasks of like, it'll be like, take this person's passport, give it to this other person, and then that way they can get behind lines. They'll be like, there was one that I didn't do, and I looked it up, and apparently if you do it, it's like an instant game over, where they're like, we're gonna cause a distraction. Here's a second key. There's like a tranquilizer gun. I think that's what it is. Oh. There's a gun you shoot people with that break through the wall at some point. They give you a second key that unlocks a different gun. And they're like, we need you to assassinate this person in line. You will get caught, but we'll break you out. And I was like, I don't know if I want to assassinate a guy. That feels like a bit much. And you can see in that, in the game, at the top of the screen, there's a bunch of like black pixelated figures, just like silhouettes. One of them is red, and so you know that you're supposed to shoot the red one. But I do want to talk about. Well, so yeah, Teo, I don't know if you did the revolutionary ending at all.
I don't remember that part.
Okay. There's also a guy named Georgie.
Yes. Oh, I do know Georgie. Yes.
Oh, how could we're an hour into this, and I know exactly who you're talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, Georgie. This just like So he's a guy who shows up, just does not have a passport, and you're like, dude, you need a passport. He's like, fine, I'll go get a passport. You got me there, man. And he keeps coming back with like just slightly more and more convincing, but still not enough. And then he comes through and he's got like drugs taped to his leg, and you're like, dude, you can't bring drugs in here. He's like, I know, Mr. Officer, I'll come back. I won't have drugs. He comes back, he has like different drugs. But if he keeps coming back, and he does through the whole game, he eventually is like, hey, you're a cool dude. I can get you some forged passports to Oberstan if you and your family want to escape, because it's so bad here in Arstotzka.
Whoa.
So if you can steal enough passports for the rest of your family, I can make sure that you guys can get safe passage.
Oh, my.
So luckily for me, I had 2 dead family members, so I didn't have to get as many. But what happened to me? So my ending. So that's one thing that's happening. The ending of the game. If you're doing this revolutionary route, your inspector is like, hey, we're gonna audit everyone and audit everyone's finances and just go through your house and your stuff. If you're not a revolutionary, you'll be fine. And that's like all they say. So I knew it was happening on this certain day, and I had all of the passports except for one. Oh, and I had to either escape on that day and leave someone behind, because I didn't have... Sorry, no, I had all the passports. I was like $10 short. Oh. So I could leave that day and leave someone behind because I didn't have enough money to get everyone through. Or I was like, I can risk one more day, hope they don't check until after that day, and then try to escape then. And then on that last day, my revolutionary guys like stormed the border, blew it up, and then like Arstotzka became a free country, and I was like, oh, thank God I didn't have to escape. But it was like very climactic moment in my personal narrative, and all thanks to Georgie, the well-meaning drug dealer.
Wow. Which family member would you have left behind though if you had to?
Actually, this is actually a really great question, because it doesn't ask you. It just says leave +2 family members, leave +3 family members, or whatever. So I was like, if I could leave my uncle behind, I can take my mother-in-law, and there's your aunt or a sister or something passes away, and you like adopt a daughter. So it was like me and this adopted girl and my mother-in-law. I was like, if I can take the women and children with me, I can do that. And if I could just give it to them, I would have done that. But it wasn't an option. It was like I had to go. I for sure would have left the uncle.
Wow, I can't believe that. Like, from that little. One of the few moments of levity, or like elements of levity in this game being Georgie, that there could be such an incredible like arc that you could go through as like an emotional journey internally, but also of this like escaping with the passports route is incredible. I had this happen in I had a run where he had come twice, obviously never had what he needed. He maybe had come 3 times, and on the 4th time he came, and all of his documents looked great, but I was like, but I know this guy he's forging something, and like, even though this all looks authentic and passes, I'm going to deny him because I've seen him. I know who he is. And then I got a citation for it, because if he actually comes with the correct documents, you're supposed to let him in. And so on the next playthrough, I let him in, and that was the last time I saw him. I don't know if he returns after that, if you let him in, but... gosh, he's so funny. And just seeing his little mug too, he's like, I don't know if he sticks out because he makes such an impression based on the character and the moment itself, or if the visual design is as such to have him literally just stand out visually, but he really makes quite the impression.
I feel he kind of looks like an old sorry, let me look his face up again to make sure I'm not misremembering. I was kind of misremembering. I thought he had more of a mustache. I was gonna say he looks like old Polish Mario.
Yeah, he kind of does look like Mario.
He does, bit. And
he's got the red, but
yeah, you can buy merch if you want. Which is fun.
Georgie merch.
There's Georgie merch on the official,
of course, there is
merch website.
That's absolutely incredible. Charles, I know you were bringing up that route that you had. Was there, before I sort of lead us into like maybe final thoughts of this thing. Was there an element that either of you have not gotten to bring up today that you were hoping to?
I did kill people on behalf of this revolution. There's one part where you have to, they give you like a powdered poison that you have to put on someone's passport. So then they die when they get through. There is like a citation managed, like once you get far enough in the game, it's like, I need to let this guy through, for the revolution, and I'm going to get a citation. Like they'll know it's wrong. So I know that's coming today, so I can't get other citations. Like I got to be particularly eagle-eyed, which is interesting.
You almost have to save your citations for that one or possibly two. Just can't go over that limit.
Yeah. And I think the last thing is just, I guess maybe this will tie into an end-all discussion. The reason the revolution is so appealing is because they give you so much money. Like it becomes a thing of, you get, I think if you do something, you get like $100 or $1,000, like some absurd amount of money that is eventually reclaimed from you when you get like an audit or something midway through the game. But it is interesting how there's part of me that's like, it's what's morally right, and I'm gonna stand up against the government. But also it's like, it was about the money. Like at the end of the day, I needed the money, and that's why I was helping them. And just all of our discussions about like how political the system is and how you can try to be good or try to be bad or whatever. It's like at the end of the day, it is the money that kind of motivated my character, which is interesting.
And let that be a lesson that anytime you're doing something for just the good of the cause, it always pays well. Every time, there's no exceptions, not at all. Yeah, I believe it is $1,000. And when that moment hit, I was like, oh my gosh, I can pay for everything I need. I moved apartments, which even though it cost an extra $100, I was like, huh, to
cares?
me, I'm freaking rich. Who cares? But yeah, when that audit comes, it's scary for sure. You can burn the money, which is interesting because I think a man drops it off at your apartment. Yeah, so fascinating. The final thought that I had, which we've been touching on throughout the game, is just the oppression of it all and how every element of this game feels like it's working in tandem to create this feeling, which is, I think, why I would have like, I wouldn't describe it as dread, but just like this like responsibility of turning this game on to play it, from the like just even the opening music and the title screen of the Arstotzka and the Papers, Please logo crawling up the screen to this bombastic, oppressive, just cacophony of sounds, was brutal. And every little element, whether it's like, oh my gosh, my little table space is so cramped, this is not enough room for me, this is stressing me out, to the citation noise that we made, the printing of the citation noise that we keep, that I've referenced several times. So many things about this game just really like drove home that feeling that I think he was obviously wanted us to feel. But to close things out, I am going to give us each just kind of a chance to like wrap up our thoughts on this game, and just put a bow on it. Doesn't have to be anything spectacular, but just kind of what we're leaving this game feeling and any lasting thoughts we have. Charles, I'll start with you, since this is both of our first times playing the game. Walking away from Papers, Please, what is sticking out the most to you?
Great game to play if you're unemployed. Really makes you feel productive. You can provide for people. I have since become employed since playing this, but it was very much a thing of like getting up in the morning like, oh, I gotta get my coffee and get into Papers, Please, because these immigrants aren't gonna immigrate themselves. You know what I'm saying? I think it's really interesting, both because of the stories that it's telling and the narrative that it is, but also how introspective it makes you, where like when you are forced with these rules that you're supposed to follow, it's an interesting game to study yourself as a player and be like, what is actually important to me and where am I putting my priorities? Because not a lot of games like really make you think about yourself and your decisions that much. I think it's cool. Yeah,
I completely agree. Teo, how about you? I know this is a game you played just, I don't know, at this point 40 years ago, and here you are returning to it. What are your thoughts having made it like a brief return to Papers, Please?
I'll just talk more about my love letter for Lucas Pope. because not only when he makes a game, whenever he makes a game, he makes like almost like a new genre of games, which is like there are like Papers, Please clones, and like when he made Return of the Obra Dinn, I feel like every puzzle game copied the mechanic of you need to get 3 things right in order for it to like lock in, which is like a big part of that game. So I'm just saying, like, anything he makes, I'm buying. I'll be there. I'll be there day one. I'll be there like day 0. Honestly, like if he needs a Kickstarter, I'll kickstart it. I'll do anything. Honestly, I love any game he makes. I'm like everything he touches turns to gold. I think.
I love it.
You're a Lucas Catholic.
That's right.
You love the Lucas Pope.
Yes, he's my conduit to video game god.
I love it. I mean, a lot of what you are saying, though, are things that I left this game being so impressed by. I dipped my toes into Return of the Obra Dinn before, just in the wrong time where I was like not in the space to be playing a sort of deduction-based game, and I really do want to return to it. But I'm kind of echoing, I feel like, a middle ground between what both of you were saying was just being so impressed by the design and in a small package and how every element feeds this game and feeds into both the nature of oppression, but how my brain started getting rewired playing it, which was, kind of getting to what Charles was saying about how, assessing what's happening to you while you're playing the game, how your like approach is changing, the ways that I was feeling conditioned to even operate both from a gameplay perspective, but also an emotional perspective of like turning off my brain to just do the job and feeling not real authentic shame, but like feeling like a shell of shame almost, a semblance of it, because I'm just playing a video game, but just that still being present for me. And I think, kind of like there were some elements of this in Indiana Jones, really just the fact that we were, going up against a fascist regime, but playing this game in the climate that we're in now in 2025 as our institutions crumble, and it feels like I hope we're not, but it feels like we're hurtling further and further down the road of fascistic leadership. It is, I don't know. It was a weird game to play in this moment in time, I'll say it. A really funny one to accidentally start off the indie series with. But yeah, absolutely incredible. Papers, Please. It's really cheap most of the time. I think I bought this game for about $5. So if you're interested in playing it out there and you listen to this whole discussion and haven't played the game, I highly recommend you go find it wherever you can play it. Without further ado, that's going to do it for Co-op episode 56, our first official indie title for our indie series this year. Coming up next month, I'm going to be playing Untitled Goose Game for the first time with our so I'm so pumped to play that. Have either of you dipped into Untitled Goose Game? I mean, Tao, you've played every game.
I played every game, but
Charles?
I don't know that one.
Oh, okay.
Or I didn't play that one.
That was a good one with when my partner plays games all the time now, but when she was first getting into it, I was like on the couch as she was playing Untitled Goose Game. It's like a good just mayhem game, mayhem checklist game.
I love it. I'm getting back for the past 2 years. In March, I have covered the first 2 Half-Life games with a certain crew. That exact crew is getting back together to play the official Half-Life 3, which we're considering Untitled Goose Game. So be excited for that next month, whether you're watching this on YouTube a week after or on Patreon as it airs for all Engineer Toad tiers on the final Tuesday every month. But yeah, so excited to get into more of this series. Before we go, I want to just say thank you to our guests here today and give them a chance to plug. So, Charles, welcome back to the show. Thanks for doing a co-op episode with me this year. And what do you want to plug on your way out?
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course.
You can check out the Indie Informer. I write there sometimes. MinnMax, regular contributor at. I do private Dungeons and Dragons or other TTRPGs if you go to charlesharte.com, spelled like my name. And I have a new full-time gig. I'll I don't know if I'll be able to talk about it by the time this episode goes up, but it should be sometime in the next few months, which is cool. And also shout out our Statska. I wrote text on it now.
Oh, we've got a Glory 2 on there.
So I kind of, it was a thick marker and I forgot the K, so it's kind of smudged. I don't know if this would pass the border checkpoint. But.
I think I'm gonna take a hit for a citation. I'm gonna stamp that and admit you for sure.
Thanks.
You betcha. Well, I'll put all that in the show notes too, so people can find you. Maybe you'll be posting about your new gig on Blue Sky or something. So we'll put links in the show notes. But dude, it was so great having you on this episode.
Oh, thank you.
You bet. Tao Yang. I mean, at this point, Mr. Co-op himself. What do you want to plug, buddy?
Oh, I just want to plug our glorious state of our Stuska. They're really just here for our security, I think. But also check dropout.tv and various shows there. And also, I want to plug the video game The Root Trees Are Dead.
Oh, yes. I've heard of this.
Big fan. Really loved it. Also kind of made by like one, maybe two people. A good, if you like a puzzle game, detective game like Obra Dinn, this hits that. It comes close to hitting that. It's a very fun, interesting little game where you just try to find the via like fake internet web searches, figure out a family tree of a kind of like a Succession-esque candy company. Yeah,
incredible.
It's very fun.
I love it. Well, dude, as always, thank you for, I don't know, we've done 56 of these co-op episodes now. I think you've been on like 8 of them or so. So it's always good to have you, buddy. I'll close this out with some plugs of my own and some plugs for the network. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by the artist Glenn J. You can find a link to his Instagram in the show notes where you can give him a follow and check out all the other cool work that he does there. The show is produced, edited, and the original music that you'll hear is done by the great Jeremy Schmidt. You can thank him for his hard work on the show by listening to his podcast, Video Games, a comedy show, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to this when it comes out on Patreon, we just did our PlayStation 1 Space Solace where we drafted our favorite PlayStation games in a desert island scenario. I'd recommend watching the YouTube video for it because I did a bunch of cool graphics and stuff, but listen to that episode. It's so much fun, especially if you like sort of games to put yourself in a scenario. It's fantastic. You can follow me on social media on Blue Sky at Connor McCabe and on Twitch at twitch.tv/consiscool69 where I'm finishing up my Control playthrough for our current games club. Every Tuesday night I stream my homework for that game and I'm streaming other stuff too. You can also follow the show on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. If you're just an audio listener, go ahead and give us a follow or a subscription on YouTube. That would be great. We're getting close to 100. It'd be great to get to that number soon. And then lastly, if you're still listening, you can check us out on Patreon. You might even be listening to this episode there because this is one of our big ticket items every month. But if you want to get more from the network, follow us there. Even if you follow us at the free feed, you get access to the occasional bonus episode as well, and a link to our Discord if you want to join a lovely group of people talking about video games and a bunch of other stuff, or me just complaining about how my sports teams suck. There's even a channel for that, folks. So doesn't that sound fun? So check us out there. There's stuff up from the free tier as well, like this series, which lives at the $10 Engineer Toad tier if you want to get this bonus every month, plus some other stuff. But again, if you like me and the conversations I have with people about games, there's a bunch of bonus stuff there. Patreon.com/super NPC Radio. But that'll do it again for this episode 56 of the Call Me By Your Game co-op series. We'll see you next month for 57 when we discuss Untitled Goose Game. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and clock out of this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.